Alright, hey guys, here we go again. I'm doing a full video of a full band now. So basically, after that acoustic set I showed you, someone came in and reset the board. So I started from scratch, although this live band has one electric, one acoustic, a bass, drums, two vocalists, and a keys, so I would have had to add quite a bit anyway. But what you can see me doing over here on the right side of the screen, the mixer screen view, is I am setting up my custom fader bank. Again, make things as easy to work with as possible. So here I go, I'm doing my drums probably here. Yeah, there's kick. And then I think, you know what, maybe I'll put my overheads first. So overheads, then kick, snare, toms. And you'll probably see me throughout this video if I remember. It's been several weeks since this was recorded, but I'm pretty sure I kind of rearranged my custom fader bank a couple times through this practice. So don't be afraid to rethink your layouts if there's something that is going to make your job easier. So there's a talkback mic. No, keys. Yes. Let me see here. Yeah, so pretty exciting stuff to watch, I know.
Hello, test 1, 2, 3, 4.
Alright, so here we go, still setting up the fader bank. Got my DCAs that I'm setting up. And you can see these are default DCAs. I'm going to have to go in and change those at some point in this practice because there are no horns. But I've decided that the guitar bus will be my acoustic bus. The horns bus I'm most likely make into my electric guitar bus, or DCA. I will have no MP3 bus or DCA. I'll probably do effects as well, they'll be vocal and backup vocal DCAs. Alright, so here we are looking at some of our channels.
Alright. Everybody ready?
Checking reverbs. Got to check my messages. It's the curse being so popular, what can I say?
I think it's voice 2. What's that? Voice 3?
Okay, so you can see I've brought my DCAs up pretty much to 0, like I talked about in that first video I sent you guys. Working my DCAs at 0. Alright, so I'm adjusting the gain on the click for them because it got turned up somewhere, so I'm going to adjust that for them. You can see it's clipping pretty badly, so I'm going to bring that down so it's not thrashing their ears. Yeah, there we go. Looks much better. And there's also a compressor on that. I should probably remove that. I don't remember if I did or not. Yeah, they're freaking out because they can't see me, but they can hear me. So I wave to them.
In tenderness. Whoa.
Yeah. So hopefully I see that compressor because the click shouldn't have a compressor like that on it. So I'm just warning them that things might change as I do the mix, so they are not thrown off by the mix changing a little bit in their ears. Again, I've got their ears running post EQ pre fader. I didn't do anything about that click compression. Oh well. All right, so working on the keys instead of the ones playing again. Because time is limited, I'm just letting them run with it, and I'm just doing my mixing on the fly. I'm not stopping them for a sound check. We'll just work it out as we go. It's not ideal for them or for me, but if time is short and both the band and the sound guy can deal with changes and not having everything you want exactly at the time you want it, then it is a much faster way to work through things. If you've got people who don't want to start until their in-ear mix is just right, then you better take your time and do all of your EQs, gains, all that stuff for the in-ears first, get them going, and then you can worry about other mixing stuff. Alright, so I'm going through, I'm just checking gains. I'm going to do the vocals first because they're going to be the ones who are most sensitive to gain changes, and I don't want to be messing with them later. Plus, they're singing right now, or they were. So it's a good time to check gains. There we go, and I've got that kick.
Hey Phil, I can't hear any vocals.
Of course, there's a vocalist complaining they can't hear the vocals, which is pretty shocking. It never happens really, but so I'm trying to clarify.
I don't hear Josh. I don't hear myself.
But that vocalist always has trouble hearing vocals. I'm just telling her that she has control over her mix. The thing is, she's used to our sanctuary where I mix the vocalists in ears. So she's just not used to having to mix her own ears.
Test. Yeah, I turned.
Oh yeah, and I also had not routed anything to the drum mix because of that reset of the board. So I need to set up the drum mix, heading to the in-ears, housekeeping things. It had been set up at a previous time, but the reset of the board by the youth crew undid that work. So here I go. I'm making sure it's a stereo bus. And then I'm going to route things to that bus. I think the vocalist is finally figuring out her in-ears. If I had more time, I would have walked her through it, but it wasn't in the cards for that practice. So I'm just setting a quick and dirty drum mix, sending it up to the in-ears. So that you can see I've got the overhead snare and tom. The kick has its own channel, so I didn't pull that up. You can see channel 3 is the kick. It's not pulled up. So I'm asking for the kick. Since no one's doing anything, I might as well take some time and get things sussed out. And you can see pretty much every channel, because it's on the default setting, is going to be on the one knob settings. So I'm going to hit my EQ first. And yeah, you can see that. Kind of trying to make that sound as good as I can, just with the EQ. And now we're working with the compressor. So real quick, kind of hit the default settings as much as I can. I mean, you might know my go-to settings, just to get things going real fast. So I'm asking him to really hit it just to make sure I'm not going to over-compress. And this drummer also tends to hit the kick a little irregularly.
And let's see. In chorus, we go verse 1 chorus, and then that little instrumental. Stay out of that instrumental.
So my little drum sound check got interrupted. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to keep setting things to where I think they should be.
Oh, careful, Michelle.
And the vocalist almost yanked her in-ears over because she's not used to being tethered. That's always funny and good for your equipment. So I'm still working on the snare there. You can see I'm doing a bell curve in the lower parametric,
I like that.
somewhere around 180. Give that a little boost and low end body for that snare.
Right there, it'll just be
Don't need to cut too much out of the mids on this one, and then we'll give some crack at 1.5 and some presence up in 5K range, 4 to 5K. Boost it quite a bit to make that really, cut through. Some good crack, and then low end could be boosted more if the person's not using a very beefy sounding snare. That snare is pretty good on the low end. All right, now we're moving on to overheads, and it's also on one knob.
Hello.
Change that custom fader bank again. Oh, and I think I realized that I had the wrong acoustic
All right.
put into the custom fader bank because I tried to pull his volume down and it wasn't doing anything. All right, so here we go. We're heading back to the overheads. Okay, I'm gonna see here. Oh, I'm trying to touch things, and oh yeah, it's one knob, so I gotta turn that off. The one knob is okay. It's a nice thing, but if you know what you're doing, probably just turn it off. Hit the gains. That kick's good, because of course he's going to hit it differently when he's playing than when he was doing sound check briefly. I bet you guys are really happy you can look into that screen and see right up my nose, making your day. All right, get that kick going. Now I'm trying to help the presenter volunteer find her place. She just showed up and she's gonna practice the slides as I'm mixing. So I'm checking the drum bus, set that at 0, get my drum mix somewhat close. I haven't done the toms yet because he's not really playing the toms. Kind of see I'm playing with the drums a little bit, seeing where things sit nicely. Sometimes pulling things up and down, because if you've been hearing something for a while, it can easily become lost in your mind and you don't realize how loud it is. I realized I was hearing the snare and I wasn't hearing the compression I wanted, so I went into just that. And then I'll go back to the volume, try to get that set where I want. All right, so now I'm back to the overheads, setting compression on the overheads. And there are a lot of different opinions on how to process overheads. I tend to not do too much to them. Some people will really squash them and cut out all the bodies so they can just have this really even cymbal sound. I tend to try to let the drums breathe on their own in the overheads. All right, now I've moved on to the kick. And kind of standard settings, decent amount of gain reduction at 4 to 1. Set the EQ up. So this guy, I think that's Tim. He's got a good sounding bass, and I usually don't have to do a ton. High pass filter, cut out the low garbage. Little bit of low mid cut, but his bass sounds good. I usually don't have to do too much. Just a couple little tweaks to bring out, some good qualities there. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing, and my camera started to move, so sorry that it's looking a little funky there. You're losing sight of the board. That's kind of hilarious. Yeah, at some point that's going to reset, because I did put in keyframes to fix that. I didn't realize that this one was going so far off the rails. Oh man, well, at least I'm not really doing anything right now. Oh, you have 2 shots of the screen, so that's cool. And I'm kind of just I've got to talk to my volunteer and reassure her about some things. And oh, here comes the board again. It's coming back. It's actually kind of a cool view right there. There we go. All right. So I got the electric guitar, high passing it. So again, this guitar player, his tones aren't. Well, you can hear they're kind of aggressive. They're really overly compressed. His pick attack is sometimes really good, and sometimes I feel like he picks too hard. He's come in the past in the sanctuary to figure out his tones, and it tends to be better for a while. Oh, there's a tom. Gotta fix that. That's sounding funky. And now he's not playing it, so we'll come back to that. Just keep coming back to that kick. If the kick is ever not sounding quite right, fix it while you're thinking of it, while you're hearing it, because that is going to be a pretty important part. Oh good, now my other camera went crazy. Sorry guys. I wish I could tell you what I'm doing right now, but I can't see it either. Oy. Not quite sure why my 360 camera does that. Yeah. So that sounds like I'm working on the acoustic. Taking out a little bit of junk. Again, this acoustic sounds pretty good, typically on its own. So a couple little cuts. Now we're on to the keys. High pass filter, always high pass filter. There's no reason not to use it. Just cut out any low accidental noise there. It's going to save your headroom and clean up your mix quite a bit. A lot of times keys need to have some of the lows taken out. Not too much, depending on how the keyboard player has set up their patches. I'm sweeping the mids to find the kind of boxy sound. Take out a little bit. So some keyboard players will have a ton of low end, and you've got to low shelf it quite a bit because it just really interferes with the bass and the bass drum. But if they're playing like an acoustic piano sound or something more natural, you probably don't have to do too much because those instruments fit fairly well with the other instruments they're meant to play with. It's like one of those huge synths and things like that where they're not really thinking about the fact that they're playing with a band. That's when you'll usually have some troubles. All right. A little bit of presence for the piano so it can cut a little bit. We're just setting up some panning. And I want to be able to hear instruments as well as I can during practice. In this video, or this session, there's an electric, an acoustic, and piano. So it's pretty easy to tell who's who. Oh, this is the young drummer again. Okay, this is the guy who played the cajon, not the drummer I was thinking it was. So I'm actually asking him to adjust his rim shots in that song to try to spread out some of the sound and make it a little more full sounding. It was just a little too aggressive in those spots. And again, he had another idea which worked even better. So yeah, it's nice when you can work with a drummer who cooperates and listens and doesn't think he knows everything. And the key there is that you have to also act, and you have to acknowledge that you don't know everything either. So any suggestion you have is really just a suggestion. All right, so vocal compressions. 3 to 1 is probably as much as I'd go on lead vocal. And I think later I probably add some parallel compression here, so the compressions will change later.
So on that 3, it's.
And you'll see as this practice goes on that this band, they've got great hearts, but so the keyboard player is pretty good. She's a good piano player.
You know what I'm talking about? The walk down there.
The drummer, he's learning a lot. The electric guitar player's got a great heart for worship and stuff, but in general they're not like highly trained worship musicians. This is the reality of working in a church environment, is that you work with volunteers, good people, but they're not paid musicians. Most of them are not trained musicians. So like what you guys have now, where your whole band is like crack musicians, or at least pretty good musicians who, you've got a lot of time to work out arrangements and really suss things out. That's just not the reality most of the time at the majority of churches. At a lot of churches, you're lucky if you have enough musicians to have a full band, which is the reason for the prevalence of tracks in so many churches, I think. And that's when then you need to think about kind of what we've talked about in the past, is that your philosophy of worship is the use of tracks something you want to do, or do you want to depend on your church and trust them to provide worship for themselves? All right, so I'm setting up some effects here again. For a vocal reverb, you want something that gives depth, maybe a little bit of shine, spreads out the vocals a little bit, but isn't too obvious. It should sound fairly natural most of the time for worship. Yeah, and so I'm setting up delays and reverbs, just kind of seeing how high I can go with them. Okay. Renaming organization again. It's not super fun, but being able to find things once you have, especially when you've just got like 12 aux buttons on the side and none of them are, the buttons aren't labeled. It's good to be able to look at the screen and tell which aux you're looking at, which one you've pulled up. If you don't do that, then you're constantly going to be going back and forth trying to figure out where you put the instrument reverb. That's just annoying. And now I ponder, where do I want to put that reverb channel that makes sense? Okay, so body pack, which is the preacher's pack. And then, so yeah, here we go. We're doing some more housekeeping in the custom strip. And you can see the wheels turning in my brain. How do I want to set this up? What's going to make sense? What's going to make sense? So again, I want similar channels together probably. But I also don't want really important channels that I don't want to accidentally turn down right next to channels that I'm constantly having to touch. Right? So having something like the
Here we go.
a reverb channel right next to my monitor might not be good, because I would go to grab that reverb and maybe I turn my monitor down. That's gonna mess me up. So thinking about those things. Now I'm setting up a drum verb channel. If you've got the effects, use them. It's nice to have a separate verb for instruments versus drums. It creates a different space for them. It helps create separation in the mix a little bit. You don't want them to be too drastically different, because then it starts to sound pretty artificial. Because our brains naturally want to hear things in the same acoustic space. But having a little bit of a difference can help separate. Too much of a difference makes it sound unnatural, which it can be a good effect sometimes. But if you're just going for a natural sound, it may not be the best. So there we go. For the drum reverb, I don't want a real long initial delay because it's a very rhythmic instrument. If it's a long initial delay, it messes with the rhythm that the drummer's playing. Low pass filter, high pass filter, that makes sense. You don't need a ton of reverb on those cymbals, and you definitely don't want your kick drum, the low frequencies, reverberating in your mix. You want that clean. So you just pass up into those low mids and then get out that low junk out of your reverbs. And again, you can do that with EQ if your reverb does not have EQ settings, high pass, low pass settings. So now I'm listening to my toms with the reverb. Where do I want those to sit? I usually end up mixing my toms with a little bit more reverb than the snare, typically. It's not a hard and fast rule, but you usually want those toms sounding big. They can be loud, but a little bit in the background, whereas that snare you usually want to pop forward a little bit more. So you don't want as much reverb on that. Another theory that I've seen some more naturalistic mixers use is to leave all your mics wide open with no gates. Just put reverb on your snare only, and then let that reverb just kind of take care of the whole kit.
All right, let's try that again.
I think that probably works the best on like a more acoustic or jazz type scenario with a more natural sounding kit, where you don't want a lot of reverb, you want a very natural, roomy sound. Alright, and so now it's time to EQ those toms, because it's hard to set the reverb correctly when you just hate the sound of the toms. You're like, I just want to turn those things down. So let's get them sounding okay, and then we can get the volume and then the level of it, and then we can set the reverb levels, double check those. So toms again, one knob off, high pass filter, boost some lows for some fullness, cut the junk out of the middle, and then we want stick attack, we want presence on the toms. Do not make the mistake of cutting the highs out of the toms. It makes, in my opinion, makes toms sound horrible. Let the stick attack cut through for those toms and let the air happen. It's also going to be dependent on how you've got your mics aimed at the drums. We talked about that in class. High and aimed at the center. You've also got to be careful not to get too much cymbal bleed. If you have a lot of cymbal bleed in the toms, you're not going to be able to EQ them the same way. And the compression on the toms can be fairly aggressive. You don't need as much upfront attack because it doesn't need to pop forward in the mix as much. So cutting it down a bit can actually help even that sound out a little bit. You want them to release fairly quickly because you don't need a lot of sustain. All right, right here, my 360 camera shut off. It'll come back on in just a minute here. So I think you're probably just missing me setting compression on the toms or something like that.
So the cut's on too, but the walk down starts.
So anytime now, I'm sure. Anytime. There we go. There will be one more cut later in this video. It'll be a little longer than that because I didn't see that the camera cut off right away.
But let's just get a feel for it here.
And now you have a new view of the mixer. Alright, so the band, of course, did not listen to the tracks ahead of time, so they're listening to the tracks now. Yeah, my volunteer is marveling at the motorized faders. It's always a cool trick for people who aren't familiar with it, although she's seen it plenty. She just is amused. I'm going to work on my reverb because I'm pretty sure that wasn't exactly what I wanted. I'm going to try to get it close here before they start up again. Turn up that delay on the instruments. 2.6 seconds is plenty. Again, high pass, low pass. And at a high pass, a low pass, you can bring down into the fives. You think about that. You've still got presence from the instruments, but you don't have all the really high stuff that's going to sound nasty, rattling around in your mix and the reverb. You've probably heard some mixes from the 80s where the reverb is just wide open on the top end, and like every S and T has this really shimmery reverb sound to it, and it doesn't always sound bad, especially with really nice reverbs where it's done well, but it's certainly not a super contemporary sound, I don't think. And it can very easily be done badly, where those sibilances just get really out of control. So especially live, it's a good idea to cut some of those highs. Yeah, pulling things out, it's really nice. I mean, I have to say, mixing with my studio monitors is really nice because I have really fast, accurate response of what I'm hearing. I can pull something out, pull it back up. You can do the same thing with mains if you're in a practice. But, with having studio monitors right in front of you that sound great, you're used to the sound of, it just makes it that much better. I think the volunteer was asking about who wrote the song or something like that.
All right, that's pretty much. All right. So the one.
So it's always nice when you have to play the track for the band because they didn't listen.
Not two measures. There's only one measure, but everywhere else it's two measures. But we
Guys,
start
come
walking
prepared.
on the three of the second measure. That makes sense. Okay, let's give it a go from the top. try that again. Sorry.
So we're just talking about the lower thirds on the lyrics with the volunteer. So here we go again.
Words are whole in life and death. Christ alone, Christ
Does Tom still sound a little funky maybe? I'm not sure.
only confidence that our souls to Him belong, who holds our days within His hand. What comes apart from His command,
Just want him a little more full sounding.
keep us to the end. The love of Christ in which we stand. Oh, sing hallelujah, our hope springs eternal.
Set the tap, vocal delay. We're gonna work on that and make sure things are what we want. Set that feedback so it's not too much.
What truth can calm the troubled soul. God is good, God is good. Where is His grace and goodness known? In our great Redeemer's blood, who holds our faith
All right, so
when fear
I'm looking at the routing of the keyboard.
the storm is right.
Can't remember what I was trying to figure out here. Oh, I'm setting up my DCAs. That's what I'm doing. All right, so right. So I've got things kind of in an okay place mix-wise, but I'd like to actually be able to turn things up and down as I want them turned up and down. So it's time for the DCAs to get taken care of. So the horn default becomes the electric guitar, and I'm not really worried about the icons right now.
What shall we say? Christ He lives, Christ He lives.
Oh, maybe I am. Gotta have that icon, I guess.
Everlasting life with Him. Then we will rise to meet the Lord in sin and death.
Alright, so the drums, I don't want to change their click mix. I want to change my DCA settings on the drums, so. Alright, bass gets its own DCA. Guitar is going to be the acoustic guitars. Keys going to be the keyboards, not the electric guitar.
That's right.
And the electrics will be the electric guitars. Go figure, right? Vox will be the lead Vox. Oh, you know, maybe I put them all up on one to start, but I think eventually I move them.
And then right after
There we go.
that.
You can hear that delay is has a little bit too much feedback. I should probably turn that down. Hopefully I did do that eventually. Oh, and more icons, you know. Backup vocal DCA.
All right, let's go from There We Will Rise, that A minor. All right, 1, 2, 3, here we go. 1, 2, 3.
And I've got a blank DCA that I'm just going to turn off so it doesn't confuse me.
Christ is our
Having channels that do nothing on your board but are labeled as though they do something is not a good idea. So if you have time, non-functioning or non-used channels, mark them as such.
Alright, let's try it one more time.
Alright, here we are back to the keys. Now my volume is working for the keys. Now another tutorial for my ProPresenter volunteer to show her how to use ProPresenter 6.
There's water.
She's just about finally learned it. Unfortunately, we're upgrading to ProPresenter 7 this month,
Okay, here we go. Let's go.
which is drastically different, as you may or may not know.
When Christ is ours forevermore. Oh, sing hallelujah, our hope springs. All right, let's try it one more time. When Christ is ours forever. 1, 2, 3.
I'm telling her she can figure it out. If she needs more help, I can help her, but hopefully I can get back to mixing.
All right.
Oh yeah, I think she was saying that she's saying she can't see the screen very well. So I'm gonna oversample the screen for her, or whatever you call it. So she can see what she's looking at, because we've got a 5K Apple monitor, but it's about 4 feet away from us, so a lot of the text is pretty small for some people to see. Yeah. So a lot of your job at a church will be, just taking care of your volunteers, taking care of your congregation, being patient with people because everyone needs something different. You have tasks you want to get done on the board. You keep in mind that you've got volunteers working with you and you want to make their volunteer experience good.
All right. Same spot. When Christ
Serve
is
people.
ours
Don't get too caught up in your own
forever.
grandiose ideas of how great you're going to make something. Right?
Vocals here. There we will rise. All right, give us our count. 2, and sin and death will be destroyed, and we will feast in endless joy.
So I was hearing a little bit too much low end maybe in the vocal there. So just bring that down a little bit. So some weeks you mix and everything sounds really good. It's just a pleasure to mix. The band is just sounding great, and you just everything's on. Other weeks it's a struggle to get things to sound good, and even once you've got the instruments, dialed in as much as you can get them, you're still totally dependent on how well the player is playing, or how well the singers are singing, how well the band is playing together. There's not a lot you can do about that necessarily, other than pull down people who just aren't playing well. But if no one's playing well, you've got to have somebody in the mix.
Okay. We made it. Let's hit verse 3 to the end again here.
A switchy switch on the DCAs, just to make things match what my brain wants to see a little bit.
Actually, let's just take it from the top.
Tippity tap.
Christ alone, what is our only confidence?
Checking that delay.
That our souls to Him belong, who holds our days within His hands. What comes apart from His command, and what will keep us to the end? The love of Christ.
I'm just kind of going through each instrument. I'm listening to the mix, seeing what I need to adjust here. Sometimes it's something as simple as just a tweak on a compressor or a little vocal EQ or something like that. It's sometimes you just have to sit and really hear, really listen to what's happening. If something doesn't sound right, stop, listen, and try to kind of reset your brain and say, okay, just because this is what I've been hearing for a while doesn't mean it's right. Try not to let your brain be desensitized. It's going to happen. It's almost impossible to overcome. But by really focusing, you can help, and then changing up the volume you're listening at from time to time. That saves your ears and helps your concentration. All right, now I'm setting up parallel compression. So this should be a little more interesting for you guys. I've set up an aux bus. The aux 15 it looks like for parallel comp. So that'll be 15 and 16. It'll be stereo. It should be stereo. And we're gonna see. So I want my gains set correctly for my vocals before I start to do my parallel compression. So I'm double checking those. Because any changes you make to the gain of your parallel compression gain of your vocals will change your parallel compression later. So here we go. Now we see there's an input coming from my vocal channels. I'm going to cut some mids, boost some highs. I think I'll probably want that end up to be a high shelf, but we'll see if I do that or not. So whatever you parallel compress, you do not want it to be annoying sounding, because it will just pop through the mix like a lot. So now I'm just slamming that vocal bus. So attack can be pretty small, pretty short. All of your transients will come through with the regular channel. The parallel compression doesn't need those. And it can be compressed for a long time. And then you're going to have to do some makeup gain like I did, +6, because you're squashing the heck out of those vocals. If you listen to a vocal compression channel on its own, it's not going to sound good at all. But when you mix it in there a little bit, it brings some consistency to the vocals. When they sing quiet, it doesn't seem as quiet. When they go loud, then their regular channel gets loud, but the parallel compression doesn't get so loud. So it does a good job of leveling out the vocals in general, but you still get the impression of dynamics because the other, your vocal channel is not being heavily compressed. It's just this side chain compression. And you can also add a little extra EQ on that parallel compression, because it'll kind of enhance the vocal sound. If it's not overdone, and you have a de-esser, of course, which this board does not have a de-esser, so I couldn't enhance the highs too much. But it can be a great way to bring out the breathy sound by using parallel compression to kind of enhance those vocals. So now I think I'm complaining about my finger, but I should be setting up the parallel compression on the drums. And I believe I will in a minute here. Oh, the band asked for the AC to be turned down. You also, since you know how to hit buttons and move faders, you get to do the AC controls too as a sound guy. So you have a lot of responsibility. It's too much is given, much is required. If you show yourself faithful in little, you'll be given much. So the little soundboard, show yourself faithful, you'll get to control the air conditioning. So this is the ADD life. I'm trying to figure out what I was doing before I got distracted. So I'm thinking, oh yeah, parallel drums. So here we go. There's you can see the little parallel slashes, backslashes, and DRM for parallel drums. So the parallel drum bus is gonna look different than the parallel vocal bus. I'm gonna boost some lows, and I'll boost some highs. So since I've already got all my drums with high pass filters, I'm just going to run a low shelf because the low junk is already being cut out. So it pretty much looks like a smiley face on the parallel drum bus. Sometimes you might need to cut a little bit of low mid if it's still a little too present. And so here we go. I'm going to do like 10 to 1. I'm going to really smash it. But I'm going to have a long attack in the 50s and a short release in like the 30s. And then again, makeup gain. This is a hard compression, which works pretty well with the drums.
We're going to do a 3 count.
I'm going to turn it on, of course, send it to the stereo bus. And then once he starts drumming again, I'm going to go back and set the threshold of that compression. But I can't do that until he's playing.
1, 2, on the 3. So it's the same thing.
And the drums, in my experience, usually really come to life and start to really punch well once you have this parallel compression dialed in.
What shall we sing? Christ he lives, Christ he lives in what we
And I usually don't spend too much time getting real clinical with that parallel compression. Like trying to really cut here and boost there, like in exact things. It's like boost 80 and down and boost 8K and up, 80 and 8K. And let the middle, unless there's some really weird, annoying mid stuff happening, just leave the mids alone. So now I'm putting the parallel compressions in there in my mix, next to the drums and next to the vocals, so I can control that level. I'm going to find that sweet spot. Yeah, so I just turned it up on the drums, and that sounds a lot better. So now I'm just going to set the threshold. Tell my finger what to do here. Finger, push that. There you go.
So just a reminder, that last chorus, the first
don't push that.
time we hit now and ever we confess, B flat.
Maybe it's not my finger, maybe it's my
Christ, our
brain.
hope in life, and B flat again so we can repeat it. Okay.
It's written that way.
That's, if you flip it over, it's on the back.
I think I was trying to assign something that there's no assigning.
Let's just do it again while we have it fresh.
I'm not quite sure what. Probably trying to send like some aux to another aux or a matrix. Oh, I think I was trying to send my aux, the parallel drum aux. I was going to have it controlled by the drum matrix or drum DCA, and that was not possible, unfortunately, on this board. So when I change, which isn't totally necessary anyway, because when you turn down the DCA, it's going to change the mix going to the aux. So it makes sense that you wouldn't be able to do that. But I was still trying to do it.
And what will keep us to the end? The love of Christ.
It would have been nice. I think I was wanting to do that to have the mute capability, where I just mute the drum bus and have it mute the parallel drums as well. Alright, so now I'm going fine-tuning some EQs. Now that I have my parallel compression in, fine-tune some EQs on the drums. Get maximum punch that I can get out of that kick. Full sound. And we're using the youth room drum mics, so they're not the nicer ones, but I mean they're still fine. They're like I think they're the Audix FP series, so they're okay. Boost the parallel vocals a little bit to help them pop a little more, come out. Okay, we can always turn it down if I need to. And your best tricks on vocals can't really help the what's going into the microphone.
What shall we sing? Christ He lives, Christ He lives, and what reward will heaven bring? Everlasting life within.
My popular self just got texted again, so you know, gotta take time to take care of business. You know, 2 texts an hour, that's how I know I'm popular. My phone just blows up like that, you know how it is.
I think this chorus, I think it's just too long in between that. So I think if we just did the same thing, just took out the first measure. So of course to Christ our hope in life and death. To
Man, I'm a slow
so
texter.
The 3 would be oh sing right there. I think that kind of helps.
Go right into it.
Yeah, bring it around. So let's try that again from when we'll go from and feast in endless joy. 1, 2, in endless joy when Christ is on.
So at this point, I think most of the really interesting stuff is probably done. After this, I'm just going to be fine-tuning things. I've got the parallel compressions done. I've got most of my EQs done. I'm pretty sure there were a couple EQs that I missed in there that are probably like the electric guitar, something in there I'm pretty sure I missed that I had to catch later and switch it off in one knob mode. Actually dial it in. Okay, a little master bus compression. A little bit of glue there maybe on the mix. I go back and forth on whether or not to do compression on the master. It usually,
Well,
you know, it's one of those things that ends up sounding good while I'm doing it, and then I listen back later and I go, should I have done that? I don't know. So if you're in doubt, just don't compress your master. It's really easy to lose track of that master compression, and it can really suck the life out of your mixes. Live in a sanctuary, I really don't think you need it. The only reason I was really considering it here was because it's going to video, streaming, right? All right, there goes the video. I think I'm gonna cut off here on the voiceover. If you wanna watch the rest, finish it, there's another 17 minutes or so, 17, 18 minutes. You know, there's probably some okay stuff that I do there. You can see how I start to mix the band. But all the EQs and the setup of the compressions and things like that are pretty much done at this point. So that's it. I hope this is helpful for you guys. If not, then I just wasted an hour talking into my phone. So enjoy. I will hopefully I'll see you guys again someday.
Just that first part is.
I'm sorry the class wasn't more of what we all expected. If you guys have any questions about any of the stuff we talked about or things we didn't cover, just email me or call me. I think most of you have my number. I would be more than happy to help you if I can. Or if at some point in the summer you're in town and want to swing by Desert Breeze and see how, kind of sit through a service or whatever, I'd be happy to do that with you as well. So I will talk to you guys again sometime. Have a great summer. Bye.
And that takes us into Come Thou Fount. So in 3/4 again, Nathan, you can click us off and off we go. What's the... Are we at 82? Sorry. Go to do 82. All right, here we go. let's stop for a second. Okay, a couple things. In verse 3, it's going to go on prone to wander. There's a little bit of toms that enter there, not there. And then on the last line, here's my heart, Lord. It'll be a quarter kick that'll enter there so we can crescendo that last line into the instrumental. And then the last chorus, Rachel, just kind of do accent chords over the... Oh, that's okay. Yep, on chorus 4, we'll do accent chords all the way through. And then once we hit Come My Lord, No Longer Tarry, drums and bass, you guys can start crescendoing that with a quarter build. Everybody builds it at that point, and we repeat that piece one time. All right. It is. I think the kick is driving in the beginning, actually. Now that I think of it. Yeah, we come in with a full groove in the beginning with a quarter kick. Yeah. All right. Let's try it again from the top.
Josh.
Yes.
Isn't there a cut at the end of the first 2 verses?
It is on the first one. Yep. Just at streams of mercy, never ceasing. Call for songs of loudest. It's not a cut, it's just a hold. You just hold that. Loudest praise. Teach me some melody. It's a, you just hit a cymbal for you. We're all out, let it ring, and then come back in on the D.
I mean, like, isn't there one at the end of every verse?
No, just the end of on the second line of the first verse. Actually, wait a minute. No, yeah, just the second line of the first verse. All right, here we go, from the top. Let's try that one more time. Are you giving us 1, 2, give us that. Sing thy grace, streams of mercy, never ceasing. Call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious song, sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mountain fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. to the light toms. Prone to wander, Lord, I fear it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's a build. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it. Seal it for thy courts above. Oh, that day, so that day when freed from sinning, I shall see thy lovely face, full arrayed in blood-washed linen. How I'll sing thy sovereign grace. Come, my Lord, no longer tarry. Bring thy promises to pass. For I know thy power will keep me till I'm on. Hold on a minute. Let's stop. Sorry. For I know thy power will keep me till I'm home with thee at last. That's it. Okay. And then it'll go till I'm home with thee at last, and then la full groove. Come, my Lord, no longer tarry to the end there. All right, so let's just do verse 4 here. Oh, that day, 1, 2, 3. That day when free from sinning, I shall see thy lovely face, full arrayed in blood-washed linen. How I'll sing thy sovereign grace. Come, my Lord, no longer tarry. Bring thy promises to pass. For I know thy power will keep me till I'm home with thee at last. Come, my Lord, no longer tarry. Bring thy promises to pass. For I know thy power will keep me till I'm home with thee at last. That's it. All right, let us move on. Holy, holy, holy. Rachel, you basically start this. Yep, you do start this. Lord God Almighty, Let's listen to that part real fast. Oh, no.